We have some breaking news. Bill and Hillary Clinton have both just agreed to testify in the House Oversight Committee's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Days before, the House was expected to vote to hold them in criminal contempt of Congress. Meanwhile, MS Now has been poring over the 3 million new Epstein documents the Justice Department released on Friday. An initial review found that more than 40 known or suspected survivors' identities were revealed in that release. Those files have since been removed, but survivors say that the damage has already been done.
You get that rush, right? That feeling that's like, oh, that shame, tingles feeling of like, I feel like I want to throw up because it's just all out there for the world to see. But for my survivor sisters who are not public and for those Jane Does, it's absolutely devastating and heartbreaking to see.
Joining us now, the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California.
Bill Clinton's spokesperson put out a statement on the Clintons agreeing to testify before the House Oversight Committee. This is new tonight. I want to read a portion of it to you. Quote, "They told you under oath what they know, but you don't care. But the former president and former Secretary of State will be there. They look forward to setting a precedent that applies to everyone." I think that's very important. So, one, your comments on the fact that the Clintons have now agreed to testify, and two, to the point that the President Clinton spokesperson makes, will there be others?
Look, I think first I want to just be clear. We have said it from day one, Oversight Democrats have said it from the beginning, that we want anyone that has any information about Jeffrey Epstein to testify, and that includes President Clinton. Obviously, there was a relationship. I think President Clinton has been very clear in public statements about what his relationship was. But I think there are important questions that should be answered. And at the same time, we should recognize that James Comer is also obviously focused on anyone that Donald Trump views as an enemy to attack. And so, look, President Clinton and Secretary Clinton made a reasonable offer just a few days ago to come and appear before the committee. And we want to hear from President Clinton. We've said that from day one. And James Comer has refused to make even modest accommodations for President Clinton. And so I think the president and the Secretary of State said very clearly, we're coming in. And so we're glad they're coming in. We'll have questions. And now I think to the spokesperson's part, look, James Comer is setting a very new precedent here, where every demand that he wants has to be agreed to immediately. What we want is the truth for the survivors, and that's our focus.
So what does this look like? When do we expect them to appear, to talk, and what do your conversations look like with Chairman Comer about who's next and where this goes? So
I think one is the dates are being worked on between Chairman Comer and the Clintons. And so that I imagine that we will have a date fairly soon, and it'll be sometime in the coming weeks. They'll come in. There'll be a deposition by the Oversight Committee and members of the staff, which will be important. It'll be transcribed, and so that will be a full deposition and sit down with both the Clintons. Separate of that, and I think as important, is we have depositions coming up with the people that have known Jeffrey Epstein the most. That includes folks like Les Wexner, who, of course, was his longtime major associate. It includes folks like Richard and Dan, who was the attorney and the accountant for Epstein. And, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell, which is going to be happening here in the next week and a half. Those are going to be all key conversations and depositions the Oversight Committee is very interested in.
So how do you, on one hand, pursue that path while also keeping pressure on DOJ to release the documents that they have not yet released?
Well, I think, first, let's be clear. The White House cover-up of the Epstein files continues. I mean, you can't say you're only going to release 50% of the documents. 50% of the documents and say, oh, it's over, we've released everything. It's an embarrassment. It's shameful. It's disrespectful to the survivors. The survivors have come out against that. And on top of that, they're not even protecting the survivors in what they've actually released. So it's been completely botched. In addition, what's really important is Todd Blanche keeps saying, well, we have an ongoing investigation, or there's interagency communication. We're going to hold that information. That is not actually allowed in the subpoena that's been in place since the summer. There may be language in the law that was passed by Congress that speaks to those issues. There's a parallel effort and legal binding here as it relates to the subpoena. They can't make those declarations. They certainly can't withhold that from the Oversight Committee. So they continue to break the law, and the White House cover-up continues.
I feel like I have learned a lot about a lot of people with these Epstein file releases. I know I understand Melinda Gates a whole lot better now. Given how Bill Gates shows up, apparently the government released a tranche just dedicated to President Clinton. But I feel like I haven't learned enough about the sitting president of the United States and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and how he shows up. The New York Times yesterday, they identified, and they put an article up about this, they identified more than 5,300 files containing more than 38,000 references to Mr. Trump, his wife, his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida, and other related words and phrases in the latest batch of emails, government files, videos, and other records released by the Justice Department. Are we going to get some accountability from the president? What does the president know about Jeffrey Epstein that he has yet to tell us?
Well, we've shared with everyone, and I made this message clear to Mr. Blanche, is they might think their investigation is now over, but our investigation is actually just getting started. And so the amount of information that we have as it relates to President Trump, why there was so much trafficking in Mar-a-Lago and in New York City, why Jeffrey Epstein called Donald Trump his closest friend for over 15 years, why the accusations that were actually made and that we're seeing in the Epstein files, which are some very serious allegations, were actually not followed up by the FBI. Why is Trump's name being removed and then put back again, and then a picture appears and it's redacted? Why the games? And so the arrows point directly back to the White House and Donald Trump. Why the cover-up? Why say you're going to release the files and then basically try to stall the release? And now, why the heavy redactions? Why the games? And why one of these allegations actually followed up on it? So the president can be rest assured that even though he thinks the investigation is over, that we have a lot of work ahead of us in the months ahead.
I think the entire public, I know you didn't even know what documents existed before the release by the Department of Justice, but they included in a statement, the DOJ did, when they released this initial tranche, saying, quote, some of the documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they have a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already. Where is your level of faith that the Department of Justice, not just this DOJ, but also previous DOJs, did their due diligence to go and try to corroborate and substantiate any of these allegations that the American public are reading in these documents?
I mean, two things. One is, it's crazy that the DOJ would write a statement like that. I mean, unprecedented. Completely just clearly it's corruption. I mean, they're trying to cover for the president. They haven't made declarations like that for anybody else. So the fact that that's included should be dismissed as really pretty unprecedented and clearly part of a cover-up. Second, as far as past administrations, I think that's a good question. And in fact, I have oftentimes said, I mean, one of the folks I want to talk to is former Attorney General Merrick Garland. And why wasn't more released to the public? Look, there's a lot of powerful men and I could care less what political party they're in, who still right now have not been prosecuted, whose names have not been public. Who are the co-conspirators? Who are the men that raped and abused women? Why don't we have those names? We should not be satisfied until the public learns the names from our own government, who has the information about who actually caused the harm, the rape, and the abuse, and the trafficking. And until we get those names, we're not stopping until we get justice for the survivors.
It was pretty wild to watch Todd Blanche come out last week indignant about any pressure to move faster or to release all the documents, really emphasizing the level of care that he believed the DOJ had given these documents. And then to learn that it's the New York Times that's catching some of these unredacted images, some of these unredacted names. When you've spoken with survivors, what have they said to you about the cost of being re-traumatized at the hands of their own government?
It's horrifying. I was talking to a survivor just yesterday. It's hard to actually explain the terror that they feel and the trauma that they're having to relive. And Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi have said time and time again that they want to protect the survivors. The Republicans have said they want to protect the survivors. It's complete bullshit. They've done nothing. They've done nothing to protect the survivors. They continue to put their names out there. They continue to cause them harm. They should be incredibly careful and censor the violence that they've had to endure. And Todd Blanche continues to lie by saying that they're going to redact the names. They haven't done so.